Nyx is number 3. That means you're getting...
Or is it?
Oh. I should make these things... I wish there was a way to make Google Sheets. Once you enter something into a cell, it has to remain that way forever. There's no changing it.
Why don't you just, like, have an automatic ranking system?
Well, you can have an automatic ranking system, but how would you implement it?
Just by, like, the first sort criteria is the ranking, and then just, like, Monte Carlo the rest.
Because then how do you tweak it afterwards?
Well, I don't know, make it tweakable, but then you wouldn't have to go through putting them all in individually.
Well, I want to have, like, I have 2 different filters that I apply to the stories based on their importance, and then once I see how they're ranking importance, then I go in and add the discussion order, then I go and filter. I can filter by discussion order, and then I can see it all in order.
Oh.
So it basically does that, just not...
This makes great listening, by the way.
Yeah. It's called Inside Baseball.
We're live. Sorry, everybody.
I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, we've got dozens of listeners. Dozens.
Literally dozens. Yeah, we're back after almost a month of no episode. The last one was, I think, January 27th or something.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, we did 2. Well, technically we did 3 East Meets Wests. The third one has yet to be released, but it is in QA right now.
Clearly, my creative juices have just been shot.
Yeah, Nick's really the only one who is here doing a podcast every week.
I've done one.
Not every week.
No, not every week.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm holding the fabric of Unwind Media together.
You really are.
It's true.
You're welcome, Rob.
In each of Mike's and my absence, you were here, steadfast.
And the great part is, I still don't put any preparation work into it. It's just, I know when I need to be here.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I know that I need to be here.
I know approximately when I need to be here.
Plus or minus 1 hour.
Yeah. All right. We do have some follow-up, considering it's been a week. I think this is mostly stuff that happened fairly recently, but who knows? The first piece of follow-up here is probably the most exciting one we've had in years, and that is that our former, part-time co-host in very early episodes of the show, Carolyn Higman, has gotten her PhD, which is I just wanted to point it out and talk about how fantastic it is.
I was going to refer to her as one of our best friends, but...
Best friend and past host.
Co-founder even.
Yeah,
friend of the show, Dr. Chiggy Sue Higman.
Can I just point out that I realized what Chiggy actually, where that came from? I only realized that a couple weeks ago.
That's embarrassing.
It is.
That was her email, right?
I never had her email, but...
It was her username on the Wookiee cluster.
Oh, yes.
It was Chigman, so we called her Chiggy.
Yeah, so congratulations to Carolyn. She successfully defended on Friday, I believe, Friday morning. And looking forward to much research from her. I don't know if she's decided what to pursue next, whether it's going to be a postdoc somewhere, but that's something we'll have to follow up on later. Maybe we'll have her back.
So.
Yeah, we could have her back as a guest. Talk about her research.
I'm pretty sure she's unemployed, so...
I don't think that's how PhDs work. They just kick you out when you're Oh, man. But if it was, though...
She will sit down with us, and Dr. Fogg's boot print will still be on her back.
Yeah. So The next piece of follow-up here, Mike correctly pointed out that it looks like I'm working at Bell now because it just says Rob goes to Bell and gets a job. Uh, Basically, I didn't really want to go too far in detail with this, but I switched from Rogers to Bell over the last 3 weeks and had Bell for a couple weeks now, and it's unlimited internet instead of being a cap of 550 gigs. That just seemed to fit with our general theme of being frustrated with internet providers, and Rogers frustrated us in that they, after our 2-year kind of special deal expired, they were just unwilling to give us any new good stuff, and so we gave up on it and went to Bell, and I've been very happy with it so far.
I want to add in that, you brought up that Bell hadn't, or who was it you were with before? Rogers. Rogers hadn't offered you, anything worth kind of sticking around for.
Right.
A couple weeks ago, I think it was about last week, I got a call from TELUS, one of those, hey, you've been with us for a while, we have a special offer for you. So I was all ready to hear, we'll give you, 1 month free and then whatever with the next level up, pay the regular price. But their offer that they originally gave me was upgrading to the next tier of internet, which was from 25 to 50 speeds, and then a unlimited cap, so non-cap, I guess. Yeah. And they're going to offer that for 3 months. 3 months at $5 more than what I'm paying now, which would be a $10 per month discount. And then after that, $5 off the regular price in perpetuity, which I thought was an amazing deal. Mm-hmm. And we were already paying over data overages because our cap is only $250, right. And so it's $5 per month extra for an extra 50 gigs, and then $10 per month extra for another 50 gigs on top of that. Mm-hmm. So we were paying pretty much $5 an extra per month anyway. So we're like, an extra $5 for increased speeds and unlimited data is pretty good. But then they call back 10 minutes later and say, so that deal we gave you before? Yeah, that's not right. It's actually 3 months at $5 off and then normal price after that. So I was like, so you're saving me $15.
Well, you have been a very loyal customer.
It's true.
And how could they not offer you that $15 off?
I appreciated them throwing me the 2 Big Mac combos as a prize, but I respectfully declined their offer. So I hear what you mean about not really getting anything worth sticking around for in that case.
Mike, to tell us you're more than customer number 2597643. You're an important revenue stream.
I was mentioning to you, Mike, after you told me about this phone conversation.
Yeah.
When they called back the second time.
Yeah.
And said, this offer, we actually can't offer it to you, I would have said, okay, can you just cancel my services then? I just seen how fast they backpedaled and said, okay, fine, we'll give it to you.
Yeah. I see. I was telling you, I'm not a good bluffer. Like, I can't, unless I'm actually feeling a certain way, I have a hard time faking that type of
emotion.
Yeah.
That's why you gotta be doing this on the texting,
right.
Not texting.
The email?
Live chat.
Yeah.
Or live chat, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, when I was on the live chat with the Bell guy, that was how I first kind of interacted with them about starting new services. I had, the trick is actually, Mike, when you're negotiating like this, for me at least, is to have a wild card. And the wild card I had when I was talking to them is that Julia was at work teaching.
Right.
So I needed to consult with her before actually going through with anything. But this guy was only going to give me the offer if I said yes right then and there in that live chat. And so I was like, well, she's teaching. I messaged her, but she may not message me back for several hours. And so I was just sitting there very patiently because I had nowhere to be. And after about an hour or so of just waiting with his live chat open, he was like, fine, I can just give you an invoice. Like he caved. But in that hour talking with him, the guy had showered. I had come and gone. And he kept offering. He kept throwing little things in to make the deal even better. And I was like, all right, this is fine. But
right.
So yeah, you have to have that thing.
I just wouldn't want them to call my bluff because then I'd be like, actually, I won't cancel.
But then what's the worst thing that could happen in that scenario?
But then I get a worse deal somewhere else. I didn't have a better deal to fall back on with someone else.
They're still going to keep your business even if you're
I
bluff
know,
fails.
but then my dignity goes down the drain. I
To
can't.
who? This call center employee?
Yes.
They put a note on your account. This guy is weak.
I'm sure I would not be surprised if they have feels like that.
They call you back again. Actually, we're cutting your services even more.
I think if they'd kept that kind of diligent note taking, that on our accounts, it would totally have notes being like, if you're talking to the guy, he's the good cop. Give him what he wants, because otherwise he's gonna put his other on the phone, and you're not gonna like that a whole lot.
Yeah. If they kept detailed notes like that, or actually referred to notes they had, I think they'd probably be in a lot better situation. But their employees don't really care. I don't think they have a lot of retention with call center employees.
Yeah. Actually, one of my first cell phone contracts was with TELUS. And then at the end of the 3 years, I got all excited. I was like, oh, they're going to offer me a deal. This is going to be great. And then they're like, hey, so you've been with us for 3 years, and you're a valued customer. I was like, I know. What are they going to give me? And then it was like, yeah, we can throw in like an extra, I don't know, something stupid like an extra couple 100 megabytes. No worries. And I was like, okay, so Kudo, you're the parent company of Kudo. They use your same network. It's the same service. But they're offering me so much more than you are right now. And they're like, yeah, we can't match that. It's like,
they can't match their own subsidiary.
Yeah, you can't match your own company that you own. Maybe that's just like, oh my God, we're still going to make money from this guy. Let's just let him go. Let him go. He'll be so much happier.
For a while, a few years ago, every once in a while I would go and see if someone could beat my Fido plan. Back when plans were still actually reasonable.
Oh man.
From the big three, and they kept mentioning every time I went to Rogers, they would say, oh yeah, actually, for no hassle, no extra charge, no cancellation fee, you can leave your Fido contract and come to Rogers. As it was almost like they were treating it like, oh, this is a special deal. We will give you we'll buy out your contract with Fido if you come to Rogers. And I was like, but you're the same. Like, this isn't. You're not losing a customer. I'm just switching. And so I never did. And I'm so glad I never did.
Guys, we're living in a world where $80 per month is a reasonable cell phone bill.
Yeah,
that's
for almost nothing.
For nothing, yeah, for like 2 gigabytes a month. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never letting this plan go.
Mike, you're not considering you get free unlimited nationwide calling and texting.
What? Oh, I'm sold.
I use 6 minutes a month.
Well, see, I actually do use phone calls, but if I needed to, I could just use data for that.
Yeah,
like,
I use Hangouts exclusively for calling.
Yeah. No, like if I needed to, I could. Because I have the cell coverage, I use mobile voice, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
So, Rob, earlier you were mentioning how you're sitting around at home on the computer because there's nothing better to do. Do you have better things to do these days?
As of this week, I have better things to do. I mentioned on the last episode I was on of East Meets West that I got hired by NSERC again. And so starting last Wednesday, I was working there. And a lot of the projects that I've basically just done a lot of reading so far, so I'm not necessarily in the best position to discuss what I'll actually be working on because it's mostly just been background reading.
Right.
But working in the Grants and Scholarships division of NSERC and doing some performance management analysis.
Could you try and sound a little less excited, Rob? Like, I need you to calm down here.
But like I said, I don't know the full extent yet. So there's a bunch of different projects that do seem pretty exciting. Like, I love looking at spreadsheets. Like, spreadsheets are my life. If I had an ideal life, I would just be like making advanced spreadsheets, and I think I'm going to get a lot of opportunity to do that. So I really am excited.
Did you ever consider working at a bank, Rob?
I did. Did I interview at a bank one time? it did not work out. But yes, I did consider that. At the time, I was a university student and I had no background in finance, so I
Because
wasn't
there are also like,
surprised.
investment banks and stuff like that where they actually cut the cord for the mouse, which is symbolic because they could just not give their interns a mouse. They they cut the cord for the mouse because they want you to be using the keyboard shortcuts for Excel because they think that if you reach for the mouse, you're wasting too much time.
I mean, that's a
It
little
sounds
silly,
like your
but
dream.
That's very ridiculous, actually,
yeah,
because I'm very fast with the mouse.
there's a lot that like clicking on a cell would, unless there's a shortcut to like go to cell A4
Well,
And
a
there,
there
mouse
I
is,
believe
button.
there
there
is
is,
actually,
yes.
yeah.
What is that?
You know,
I'm
in that
very,
little window in the upper left corner where it shows what cell you're in, you can actually enter stuff into that.
but how?
Well,
What's the shortcut to that?
you'd have to look at it. I don't know off the top of my head.
Oh, the way you both went. Oh, there's definitely a
Well,
thing, but neither
because
of
there
you know what it
is.
is.
I've just never needed that level of power user.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you could just
But
click into that box and enter it in.
Well, but you don't have a mouse.
Well, you should, because that's my point.
No, we're on the same page.
So, Rob, has your old boss come to chase you down and finish the work you were working on before you got let go?
No, but I'm supposed to probably be meeting with him next week, so I'm very intrigued to see what happens.
hey, so we employed you again. Where is that project? Do deadlines mean nothing to you, Rob? It's been months and no work has been done.
As far as I know, everything went fine. The last email that I had in my inbox when I reopened it was a thing saying we need access to, or they're trying to get access to my email so that they could see, like, get access to files and stuff. But as far as I know, that's just because the file management system at NSERC is pretty opaque. Like, it's hard to navigate and find stuff unless you put it there.
Right.
And so, yeah, they were trying to figure that out. And I was like, go for it. I want to help as much as possible, but I'm not there.
Rob's got like 5 job offers hitting his inbox from other places.
That would
Don't
be
mind
unfortunate.
those. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
So as I get more information about what I'll be doing, I'll talk about it. But for now, it's mostly been just reading about the grants programs that NSERC has and kind of how they're given out. I think I'm going to be doing some stuff optimizing how much money goes to each like researcher that applies and whether we should be giving a lot of money to a few different researchers or like a little bit to lots of them. Which I'm very intrigued to see which is more kind of efficient, which is a more effective use of government like tax funds. So
Are you almost going to be doing like a meta-analysis of
Yeah.
prior distributions to see kind of like rate of return and that kind of thing?
Yeah, like frequency analysis kind of stuff.
Oh,
I'm
nifty.
very intrigued.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
So you don't sound excited, but you're saying words that make it seem like you're excited. It's hard to.
No, this is like my thinking face when you shut down and you're in your own mind, but you still need to communicate to the outside world. That's that face.
Yeah, that's my normal face. Everything else is the weird.
Is
the
that
weird
like
time.
resting thinking face?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So, Mike, let's move on to actual scientific follow-up from outside our lives. Not that there's anything wrong with our lives, but what do you have some news, some update on the Netflix whole geo-blocking situation?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk on VPNs and how they're getting the kind of beat down from Netflix these days. And so I told you guys before how our TV stopped being able to access Netflix through the unblocking program that we had.
Yeah.
For some reason, the laptop still works with it, but the TV has been blocked. I don't know how that works, but so it looks like now not only is Netflix blocking the service, the stuff being accessed by VPNs, but PayPal has started blocking accounts that are associated with unblocking services to use them.
Right.
So what this one company was, let me just pull up the name here.
Unotelli.
Unotelli,
Unotelli.
based in Canada. They're similar kind of unblocking service where they issue a DNS to use. I'm assuming it's DNS based.
Yeah.
I think that's what most of them are. They issue a DNS to change your region. People were previously able to pay with PayPal for their service, but now PayPal has blocked Unotelli from having payments processed from them. So now they only accept credit cards. So I guess because Unotelli is using a service that violates copyright, trademark, right of public publicity or privacy in Canada, then PayPal saying, well, you can't use it because it's an illegal or kind of semi-non-legal service. So that's the basis for why they're blocking that. So we'll see how much further this goes as far as these types of things being cracked down on.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of continued bad news for the unblocking industry.
Yeah. I read a pretty hilarious think piece from when this happened, just talking about how PayPal is just doing something like this is just dumb on PayPal's part, because immediately the services was like, yeah, they shut down PayPal, so if you use PayPal to pay, you will just have to move to your straight to your credit card and continue paying us. And so like PayPal's just losing customers, but
well, it's
not really affected.
It's a proactive move too, though, because say if at the end of the day the government rules that these unblockings are straight up illegal, because right now it's just Netflix saying we're not going to allow it anymore. It hasn't been coming from the government of Canada saying it's illegal, but I think a lot of these companies are seeing that coming, possibly, so they're covering themselves to say we're cutting ties with them as soon as we're realizing that it's illegal or possibly illegal, so that the government doesn't come back and say, okay, well, you have to pay us fines for allowing these services, even retroactively, possibly.
Yeah. Is that going to happen? That seems really unlikely.
But see, for the amount of revenue that PayPal's getting from these smaller unblocking services, I think the pro con, the potential payoff is greater than any losses from loss of service.
Yeah, I think like in this article here, which is actually from Mobile Syrup, they talk about a legal gray area. I think that's kind of an odd way to describe it, because it's like the fact that no laws have been made about it either way doesn't make it a legal gray area. It makes it illegal just carte blanche. You can just do whatever you want until they start enforcing something or not enforcing anything. Like it's too new. It's a new thing, and no court has actually ruled on whether it's legal or not. So it's
just, the law hasn't caught up with how it's being used, because there are legitimate ways to use VPN and region changing services.
Yeah.
But in the ways being used for Netflix and other types of services that are region specific due to copyright or that type or licensing, it's like you said, it's a new thing that the law hasn't caught up with. So it's in that case it's a legal white area because there's no laws that are against it right now.
That is how reductionist theory works. Although, I was going to say, have any of you seen that meme that's floating around on Facebook that has a picture of Elon Musk and saying that he was an illegal immigrant and that, had they just kicked him out of the States, he wouldn't have built Tesla or
PayPal?
I was actually thinking, like, I don't know anything that Elon Musk does. I just know Tesla and SpaceX. That's what I know of him.
Well, he has the solar company too.
The solar company?
I think it's called Solar City, maybe. He has a bunch of kind of energy stuff. But yeah, he created PayPal and then sold it to eBay.
Okay. Like, have you seen that one floating around?
No, I haven't seen it, but yeah, it's a very valid point.
Yeah, I have. It's interesting, but what's funny is I saw that and immediately headed to Snopes. And
as you should.
Always.
Yeah.
Snopes, very good organization.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Elon had actually commented on his legal status, and he was saying, it was a legal gray area. And his brother looks at him, goes, was it though? Was it? And he's like, it was a legal gray area. So it's just funny that we're talking
Yeah.
about legal gray areas, and I
Yeah.
just came across that,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about Elon later.
To go off on a even further tangent on that,
Ooh, rabbit hole.
this the reason like that whole point of not all illegal immigrants are not contributing to society. That's why the U.S. has started processing illegal immigrants and giving them, I don't know what the term would be, but basically saying, okay, if you come forward and start the process right now, we're not going to kick you out, kind of thing. People who have established residences and are contributing, they have jobs, all that kind of stuff. They don't have to be in hiding anymore. They can come and actually get legal residency. Even if
Amnesty programs.
yeah, amnesty. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, which is why because otherwise you'd have to be hiding the whole time. But
Yeah.
they're recognizing that these people are contributing to society and are valuable members of the United States.
Huh.
Which is good.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was going to start playing devil's advocate just because that's usually what I think is valuable in a show like this. And are they, Mike? Are they really? And then it's like, nope, not going down on that one. Also, I think I should just keep like a big carrot here, and anytime we head down a rabbit hole, just like start eating it,
Oh yeah, for sure.
crunching loudly into the mic.
I've always thought that we need like a soundboard for like sound effects. So it's like going down a rabbit hole, boing, or something like that.
Become a radio DJ.
I hope that boing is what we go with. 'Cause
Specifically for rabbit holes for really no reason.
well, rabbits hop. And
Yeah, that's what I was
that
going
makes
with.
A boing sound if we're going full on onomatopoeia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which sounds nothing like its actual meaning, but that's fine. Mike, what's your next piece of follow-up?
Well, we may as well talk about Elon Musk since we're already talking
Sure,
about
yeah.
him. I'm going to just go out and say that I called this because when we were talking about the SpaceX program, and I said, oh, now Elon Musk has to come up with electric rockets. And you guys are like, okay, Mike, if you say so, that's going to be a thing. Well, sure enough, Elon has said he has ideas for an electric plane that can take off vertically. And as we all know, an electric vertically taking off plane is basically a rocket. So
Yes.
that's
Well, or a helicopter.
a rocket, Rob.
Or the that English one that has the wings or the engines that rotate on the wings.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking of. That's probably the route he was going with the electric vertically taking off idea. But
Yeah. What is that plane called?
Harrier? The jump jet?
Harrier, maybe.
Yeah.
yeah, those are the ones that you have on those cargo air carrier ships. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's kind of cool that like Elon just teased this idea. It's not
Right.
like it's a fully fledged product by any
I'm
stretch.
very intrigued as to how you'd get the proper amount of thrust for an electric rocket. It just seems like it would be very difficult, but I'm intrigued to see what he comes up with.
Have
Well,
you not
that's-
seen what he's achieved already, Rob?
Well, I'm very
difficult,
excited.
if not in his vocabulary.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah.
We should talk off air about a potential Elon Musk partnership project.
Definitely.
With Unwind Media?
No, with other people, but Unwind Media. What if we could just set up in a completely otherwise off the grid town, completely supported by solar and power walls?
Let's do it. I'm
Yeah.
game. And
Okay.
and we'll drive Teslas, obviously, but
Obviously.
Well, wait, here, you only really need them in the winter, or if you're going somewhere for groceries, or not even then, because we'll have bikey bikes in this town.
oh, electric bikes. I mean, if it's in
No.
Nevada or like California, it'll be fine, but if we're in Canada, then it will not.
Yeah.
There'll be a few months of the year where you'd have to use your fat bike, obviously,
Sure.
but that's why you get a fat bike,
I guess
so
so.
you can bikey bike in the winter.
Yeah. And then in other rocket space news, Virgin Galactic has come out with their next model of their space tourism plane.
Yes.
If we all remember, the first one in 2014 had a fiery demise.
Yes.
So they've come out with 2.0 that apparently is a bit more intelligent and safetied. There's an interesting quote from Virgin Galactic saying that the first version of Spaceship Two, which is what it's called. I don't know why it's called Spaceship Two if it's not the second one.
What do you mean it is the second one?
Wasn't the first one called Spaceship Two as well?
I think there was Spaceship 1, 1, and 2, but I think they were called Spaceship 1.
Oh. Okay. So there's a firm that developed the first one, and I think the second one as well, that they didn't compensate for potential human error.
Right.
So what caused the malfunction of the first one was due to human error, and this company didn't think that that type of human error was possible / realistic enough to incorporate into its safeties, which, considering it's a plane, you'd probably have to cover most, if not all, human error potential, but
yeah,
I guess they didn't feel that it was. So this new version, I think, takes that into account, if not more than that. So yeah, we'll see once they start testing this one with people in it to see how it goes. But hopefully it has a better outcome than the first one.
Sure.
And this is the type of plane that gets carried up by a larger mothership and then blasts off into the space, quote unquote space, by its minimal definition, to give passengers that feeling of weightlessness and then fall back to Earth. So it's not for any other purpose than just a thrill ride, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
But
cool.
No,
well, we'll keep our eye on it. I was actually having a conversation last night with some people about. I think we started talking about risk and skydiving, and then we were talking about how to make a plane less bumpy. And I said, well, I would take Virgin Galactic's space plane, because then you fly just above the atmosphere, above at least most of it, and how I would find that safer in theory, not in practice, obviously, given the test flights. But in theory, once they get kind of space planes better, I would much rather go up into the stratosphere or the ionosphere and fly through. Well, there'd be no turbulence up there because there's very little air, so you just have to go fast, and you could go to Australia in a couple hours.
Didn't they try that with Concorde?
Well, Concorde was maybe a little bit higher, but its main thing was low drag, high speed, and it was it was too expensive given that technology to be viable. Yeah. So they took it offline. It wasn't like it was very dangerous or anything. It was just not as popular as it needed to be to stay going.
Yeah. Does anyone else have an issue where an article will consider free fall as weightlessness?
Is there really an objective difference in how it feels?
Well, but that's the thing. It's not about how it feels, but you're not weightless if you're in free fall.
Microgravity, right?
Well, you're just falling. No, you're just falling.
But if you're in space, you're in
in space is microgravity, yeah.
But you're still
in space. You're also technically in free fall.
Yeah. You're
what?
Free fall. You're falling.
No, you're not.
You're falling around the Earth.
No, in orbit, yes. I'm not talking about orbit.
Okay, we're talking about orbit.
I'm not talking about orbit.
Okay.
I'm talking if you're just out in space, in actual zero gravity.
Then.
Okay.
That's weightless, right?
Yeah.
Anything else is free fall.
Yes, you're accelerating constantly, and the acceleration is just a lot lower if you're you appear or you feel weightless unless there's air resistance. Okay,
so in the Vomit Comet, that's just free fall simulating weightlessness, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're in the Vomit Comet during free fall, and you're in an identical capsule in open space,
I'm not saying that
what's the difference from your reference frame?
I'm not saying the experience is different. I'm just saying you can't call it weightlessness.
But it's apparent weightlessness.
Sure.
Yeah.
But these articles aren't saying it. They're like, oh, they experience weightlessness for however long. I was like, that's not weightlessness.
It,
That's just
you
free falling.
Yeah, the argument could be made that you are experiencing weightlessness even if you're not actually weightless. But that's a
Anyway,
semantic
I
argument,
just I
and
just wanted to bring that up.
neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Uh, so you have one more piece of follow-up, Mike?
Yeah, this is kind of more of a you should all check it out when you have
Hmm.
time because I don't want to get too much into it right now because we could talk about it for a good long time. But we were chatting about solar power in the electricity sense, and it comes up every so often. And someone in Calgary actually bought into the NMAX solar program that they have, where for however much you get the installation of the solar panels, and then you're still hooked up to the grid, but NMAX buys back the excess electricity at the same current rate as they're selling it. But then if you ever have to buy electricity off the grid, it's the current rate plus 5.5 cents transmission charge, I guess, or whatever.
Okay.
And this guy did it, and he's finding that he's generating as much electricity as he needs. So like his electricity generation matches his electricity consumption, but the issue is that he's not generating it at the right time because obviously with solar it's only generating when there's sun. So
Yeah.
if when he's using it in the evening, he's obviously having to use a grid.
Yeah.
So that's where he's paying the 5.5 cent per kilowatt hour charge for anything he has to buy. So long story short, he's seeing that the payback period for his solar panel system is greater than 30 years, which for all intents and purposes is not at all.
Life. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's obviously saying that battery storage would allow him to rely just solely on solar, but it's not economic. It's even less economic because you have to actually buy the battery, have it installed, all that kind of stuff. And then I guess like batteries themselves aren't going to last for 30 years, so
Right.
at least not with current technology. So there's all those things to consider when you look at the economics of it. So it's kind of like, well, solar's good if that's something you value, to have alternative energy, but it's not a cost savings by any stretch, not right now, and not in Calgary.
Right.
So
Hmm.
just at
Like
current power rates.
if you had something closer to the microfit program, I'm sure it would work a lot better. Like the microfit program in Ontario. But
Which one's that?
we've talked about it a lot because it's kind of a big deal. Makes a lot of people very upset in Ontario.
Very.
I'm not familiar with the name, but
Oh, they pay out like 18 cents a kilowatt hour if you're a generator under a certain threshold. And if you're generating under that certain threshold, it's almost certainly wind or solar.
Yeah.
And so you'll have people that, like, it's Ottawa did an interview
We did.
with
Yeah.
a lady. That, pardon?
She
Didn't
was
hear that again. I'm sorry.
she was with the Ottawa Renewable Energy Cooperative. So they
Yeah.
did microfit. They worked with microfit projects, and they all
okay.
kind of paid into it and then got the benefits out.
Yeah, like she would not have that kind of job without the microfit program.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are very upset with it because it ends up costing the consumer in Ontario a lot of money for the power that's generated, but that's
Hmm.
how you invest in a renewable energy future. You have to stimulate it.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that there's actual some statistics and hard numbers with what solar looks like if you use it in Calgary. So I'd encourage anyone who considered solar, or just was curious about how it looked economically, to take a look at this Imager slideshow, I guess you could
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah, and there's also, I've put a link in the notes from an organization called Desmog, which I also saw floating around on Facebook. The title of the article is "Here's How Canada Could Have 100% Renewable Energy by 2035." I disagree with the title, just throwing that out there right now. But like the map is really interesting to look at because it maps out our wind and solar resources in Canada. I
Right.
find it quite interesting.
Cool. I will. I'll add that to notes.
Wonderful.
So you guys want to actually start main topics of the show? It's only been a little over 40 minutes.
Sure. Down for that.
I don't
So
see why not.
yeah, there was some big science and tech news that happened in the last 3 weeks, and the biggest, I think, is the fact that to a much greater certainty than ever before, we have discovered gravitational waves, or at least evidence of them. And uh, I'm just so excited. Like we've been waiting for this for so long, and we had that close call last fall, sometime last year, where one of the I think it was like a South Pole observatory or something found evidence of it in the cosmic background radiation, and then it turned out to just be dust. But now we've found it, and it's like it was something like 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 chance that it could be like just random, and all it took was finding two giant black holes colliding like millions of light years away. And we have evidence of very, very slight gravitational waves. What did you guys think of when you heard this first?
My first thought, like my initial reaction was, "Oh my god! Oh my god!" And then my next reaction was, "Of course, Future Chat is on hiatus. Of
Yeah.
course, the biggest science news of the century so far, and we're on hiatus.
Yeah,
Of course."
yeah. It had to happen.
It's funny because I recently listened to an episode of East Meets West where you guys casually mentioned how it's still debated what type of form gravity acts on other things.
Yeah,
And then I read this. I was like, oh, I guess you'll have to revisit that on East Meets West because it's all but confirmed now
yeah.
how gravity behaves. And Einstein was proven right, finally, after all this time of being a hack in science and never being respected. Who's laughing now? But
Well, I mean, in all honesty, he was a laughingstock for quite a while.
not
He
these
won.
days, though. But yeah, at
No,
his
I
time,
mean, but
yeah.
he won his Nobel Prize for the photoelectric effect.
Yeah,
Like his work there, not relativity, which is
Right.
kind of. I mean, we use the photoelectric effect all the time, but it's kind of hilarious how that's worked out.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Like just I'm always amazed at these astronomical discoveries when they're literally astronomical, where
Yeah.
the detections are so minuscule,
Yeah.
but you can determine with such confidence what they're telling you.
Mm.
Like anything if it's like light absorption or like parallax, like any of that kind of stuff, it's crazy the scale that these measurements are taking place at.
Yeah.
Like I don't have offhand the number, but this laser that was detecting these, it's a lag or a wave of however frequency is so small, but it's like that was what was predicted, and that's what they saw.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about, I
So-
think it was several miles, and we're talking about like milliseconds of difference in travel time. or
Right?
something
No,
like
exactly. At that, yeah, how far they're detecting.
that. Yeah. And this is like the most massive event that we've ever seen, like one of the most massive events we've ever seen in the universe, happening super far away.
Wait,
It's like, we can just barely detect it.
this is the most massive thing we've ever seen. Is it
Wow.
aliens? Could it be aliens?
Aliens would not be the most massive thing we've ever seen.
Are you sure, Rob? Are you confident?
I'm not.
Is it a Dyson sphere? Is that why there's no light coming from these supermassive objects?
Nick, we shouldn't jump to conclusions that it's aliens. That's just irresponsible.
Oh. Oh, I see. Okay, that's.
Yeah, there's a double standard going on here. You can't.
Oh.
Only Mike and I can do that.
And to be fair, we get excited about aliens when that's one of the more logical conclusions.
But you're saying, in this sense, aliens is just preposterous.
There's
Well,
a
no, it's
more
black
likely. Yeah.
Okay,
Who
good.
said that they're black holes?
As
Come on,
as a
Nick.
okay. On a serious note, as serious as aliens are. How does LIGO work? LIGO.
Man, being able to explain that, and I've watched several videos on how LIGO works. The best I can tell, it's kind of similar to an interferometer. Well, I mean, it is an interferometer. Like it's a massive.
What does
Like
the I stand for, Rob?
there's two. No, okay, but when I say the word interferometer, I'm talking about like a tabletop one, whereas this one is like on the scale of CERN, like it's massive because they need that much separation between the two stations, the two observatories, to actually sense even a like minuscule effect. Because these waves they're just so I guess the wavelengths are just so tiny that you need to see it over massive distances in
Yeah.
order to actually be able to observe an effect that you can kind of pin down, because there's so many other kinds of waves rippling through the universe that picking gravitational waves out from the noise is insanely difficult.
Right.
I'm sorry that I misused the word interferometer, in that this is literally also an interferometer. It's just massive.
Okay. Glad I got that sorted.
But what I should do actually is find a few of the best videos that I've seen explaining it, and then I'll link to those as well, because it really is like they're saying this is on par with things like the invention of the telescope in terms of what it will enable astronomers to actually now do, like what it'll enable them to observe. It kind of opens up an entire new world of discovery, which, yeah, I mean, we're going to have so much stuff to follow up on in the next 30 or 40 years of Future Chat.
I'm excited.
I can't wait for the next 40 years of Future Chat.
I know, right?
Be old people. I've been telling you for 40 years now, Rob. It's not aliens.
Can you imagine if we broke that news on this show? How amazing that
Of
would
course,
be!
we would break it. Like,
By
no
then,
other.
we will be partnered with TEDx.
Well, and Carolyn will be doing groundbreaking research, so we'll have first-hand access to.
Carolyn will be
that
working at
news.
LIGO.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of call for inorganic chemistry at LIGO.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe they'll use a dye laser, and then there will actually be call for
Maybe.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the operation of LIGO.
Yeah.
And I'm just shocked, like, at how simple and yet just mind-bending this operation must be.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking about how incredibly important atomic clocks are to modern-day science.
Modern day everything, really, the world would not run properly if not for atomic clocks.
It's true.
I know, just crazy. And we all just sat around and agreed that, like, this many hyperfine oscillations of a cesium-137 atom. It's like, yep, that's a second, all right. And now, like, everything just balances on that needle that head of a needle.
Yeah. Even things like, I mean, Einstein's other big discoveries like relativity, or I guess not discoveries, but kind of he elucidated the theory. Like GPS requires atomic clocks and also relativistic effects in order to actually kind of correctly keep time with stuff on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Anything else to say on gravitational waves, or if we move to the other big story from the last week?
This thing is just interferometers, but at opposite ends of the United States. That's all it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it would be so much more complicated. And it's like,
huge.
well, literally, because like it makes a 4-kilometer beam path.
Yeah.
So yeah. Wow.
I would have thought this, considering your amazement at the actual discovery, that you would have also looked into it a little bit beforehand. But The fact that I called it an interferometer, you laughed at me, but now you're like, it really is just an interferometer.
No, because I thought it would be more sophisticated than it is.
Mhm.
I also laughed at you because it's basically an interferometer, and interferometer is in the title.
I know.
It's just a laser interferometer.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's how they disproved the ether, like the concept of the ether which light moved through. And now we're using the same thing for gravitational waves,
Yeah.
which is
Which,
like
the closest thing we're ever going to find to an ether.
yeah, it all comes full circle.
They were right. They were right. They just didn't have a big enough interferometer.
It's like that first guy who tried to study NMR and just couldn't, like in the 1800s or whenever it was, and they were like, yeah, I didn't see anything.
Oh, man.
Wow.
So the next most important story, and this is something that we will not be able to discuss with any kind of real information, although there has been kind of some recent stuff about this. It's phrased here as Apple versus the FBI. I don't think that's really the best way to phrase it, but
that is the best way to phrase it. That's what's happening.
I mean, if we want clicks, that's the best way to phrase it. But
do we not want clicks?
We want listens, not clicks.
We want both. We want clicks and then listens. This whole situation, like it's not Apple taking a stand against the FBI.
Yes, it is.
No, but it's the whole encryption debate kind of coming to a head between this one company that they've chosen, like the biggest tech company in the world, that they've chosen to kind of battle it out against. But really, they just wanted to set a stage to have this discussion and have this fight.
Okay, so Rob, give us some background.
Okay, so back in, I guess it was last fall,
year,
early winter, there was a shooting in San Bernardino, California, and the FBI was doing research, and there were local authorities involved in it too, and all this stuff, because it was terrorism, so the FBI got involved, and it was a whole big thing. And one of the shooters had an iPhone that was being backed up, but basically Apple's encryption on their backups and on their software is too good to be able to be cracked by even the FBI. Like, even code breakers can't break good encryption. Like, that's the whole point of good encryption. You pick really big numbers. They can't be factored without like thousands of years on supercomputers, and so
prime numbers. Prime numbers is what you're looking for.
Yeah, with they're finding the factors of two prime numbers that are multiplied together. Anyways.
By the way, can you believe the size of that prime number that was discovered?
I know, right?
It's so big, and it doesn't have any factors other than one in itself.
Mind-boggling.
Anyways, back to the actual topic. So there was this whole thing for the last couple months that has kind of come to a head now, with the FBI saying, we want Apple to basically build a custom piece of software that will break into this iPhone and allow the FBI to see the contents of it. But so that's a whole debate on itself, whether Apple should be required to build a backdoor into its devices to beat encryption.
Can I add something first?
Yeah, sure.
Because the articles
the
articles I've read on it, at least my understanding of it was that the FBI was trying to get into the phone itself, not necessarily the backup, because
there's a whole other issue with backups, that comes in later.
So it's the phone itself they're trying to get into. So I think they tried breaking in with the passcode, but Apple has in their iPhones a system where if you put in too many incorrect codes, it wipes the phone. So that was one aspect. The FBI was like, "Okay, we need you to take off that functionality where it wipes the phone if you put in too many." Then the other aspect was that the iPhone, every incorrect one, it makes you wait longer before you can try another attempt.
Every incorrect 10.
Every incorrect 10, it wipes it, but every
No.
incorrect...
Okay, so the way it's set up, you can toggle a switch that
Right.
after 10 tries it will just wipe.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
If you don't have that switch on, after every 10 tries, it will just bump you up from
Oh, okay.
30
Okay.
seconds
Gotcha.
to a minute to like
Right.
a billion
Years or
years.
whatever. Yeah.
No.
So the FI wanted the Apple to not only remove the functionality where it wipes a phone, but to take away the delay between code attempts, and they wanted the ability to just plug something into the phone and just cycle through all these attempts of the passcode
Right.
without having to hand enter it.
Yeah.
So it's like the FBI was coming across as very lazy, for one. I just want to put it out there. Get some intern to just hand enter passcodes. Apparently, it was too much for them.
Well, in
and
fairness,
Apple,
a brute force attempt could take 5.5 years with the delay.
Yeah.
right. So no, so
That's a lot of interns.
Apple was saying that they'd have to custom build software in order to do that,
Mhm.
and it'd only be effective in new iPhones. They can't retroactively put that on the phone, I think they were saying. And then the whole encryption aspect was its own thing as well. So there's multiple layers to this issue,
Well-
but at the core of it is security and a company's responsibility to both the consumer and to the authoritative parties.
Well, apparently, they just basically want the ability to brute force it. Like, they just want to plug it in and be able to brute force it. But the other issue at play was this was an older iPhone. Like, this was an iPhone
5C.
4 or something like
Oh,
that.
5C.
And so, so apparently with the newer versions of the iPhone, it would be impossible to do what they're trying to do. It's because the security has gotten better in recent years, as it should. But it's only the fact that it's an older iPhone that they would be able to crack it this way, because it would just be impossible on a newer device.
So, on that note, one of the New York Times tech reporters, Farhad Manjoo, clarified that he got a quote from someone at Apple, or Apple made a quote saying that isn't true, that the newer one still could. It'd just be different.
Oh, okay.
Different and potentially harder, but it could still be done.
But, like, the thing on the older one wouldn't be... Like, it wouldn't just easily transfer over to the newer one.
Right, yeah. It'd be different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And see, that's why it's kind of silly to talk about this right now, because there's so much mixed information.
But there's even more. Like, there's more to this story than just that. Like, that was the thing that came out first, but now they're saying that the FBI actually changed the password, the iCloud password of I guess the Apple account that they were using at some point in the investigation, and apparently pretty early on. And so now the device is no longer backing up, which means that if it had been backing up, they would have been able to get in through iCloud, because iCloud backups aren't encrypted.
Right.
But because they did that, now the device isn't backing up the way it's supposed to be, because it's locked and they can't change the account within the phone. And what that means is basically now people are accusing the FBI of doing this just to get Apple to build a backdoor into iOS, just so that they have that in the future, like we talked about with the Digital Fortress, which is a really great book. That really all it was about all along was the FBI was like, hey, maybe we can get a backdoor if we do this and make it necessary that we get in for terrorist reasons.
So how did they change the password if they didn't?
Not on the phone itself, on their account.
Right.
How did they get
the original password? Yeah.
But it was not on the phone.
Okay.
So, a note on that specifically. Like the FBI, in the FBI's request, they are saying that they would use this once and only once.
Right.
And it's not like they want them to build a backdoor into all iPhones. They just want this one modified version of the 5S operating system or whatever it is. But the issue with that is, like, it's two-pronged. One of Apple's points, and I agree with them, is that creating that for the first time is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be many people who will have access to that code. And there are people who will pay very good money to get access to a copy of that code because
Yeah.
code is like that. All you have to do is copy it and send it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like opening Pandora's box. You
Yeah.
can't cram it back into the box. The internet never forgets.
Yeah.
And the other thing that Apple disagreed with, and I am on Apple's side, which is a phrase that I didn't think I would be uttering ever, but here we are. The issue is that it's a dangerous legal precedent to set.
Yeah.
Because one, like the FBI is referencing the All Writs Act of 1789
Right.
to try and get Apple to do this for them. And that's, maybe you're reaching just a little bit when you're going for a law that's over 200 years old. But, and like that, because the court system is so dependent upon legal precedents, and you can't just revisit them willy-nilly. Like, the court will actually shut you down if you're trying to overrule a precedent because they'll say not enough time has passed yet.
Sure.
Long ramble longer once, but if you have a legal precedent for it, they can ask again, and a court will uphold that.
Mm-hmm.
It's still up to a
And
judge.
that's, well, yeah, it's up to a judge, but if a judge,
Nick, your internet
and
is
so
going
if you
good.
set out this precedent, you're basically setting out a guideline that says, oh yeah, this is totally cool, this is the thing we do now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though I missed something.
You're having bandwidth issues.
Yeah, I caught that.
Noon rolls
I didn't think it
around.
was too bad because I could still see Rob, but yeah, here we are.
I think we got the gist of your point, but yeah.
Yeah, legal precedent.
The long and short.
None of us are lawyers, and I'm not a lawyer for one, but
Yeah.
I don't know how much power legal precedent has. Like, obviously it's a thing, but
It's what it's all about.
yeah.
Like if you're
So-
looking at the United Kingdom, for example, basically everything is legal precedent.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they have, like, their attitude is, their current thing is that they have an unwritten constitution. So it's just all the laws they've ever passed ever, that's their constitution.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the entirety of the UK legal system is precedent.
Yeah, like even things like murder, there's no law against murder. It's just legal precedent has said you go to jail if you murder someone.
What? Is that true?
That was my understanding of it.
That might be a reach, but like basically,
But like that's the
they
kind
do
of
have a criminal code, I'm sure,
Yeah.
and that's slightly different.
yeah. I'm not sure how it works exactly, but that's the kind of thing that I've heard. Maybe not to that extent with murder, but like if you commit a crime, it's like legal precedent is what's going to get you convicted, not any actual.
So, like, for example, income tax in Canada. People don't like paying income tax. People have gone to the Constitution and said, the government has no constitutional basis for taking my money away from me just because I earned it. But every single time that has gone to court, it has been, well, laughed at heartily, for one. And it's never succeeded because of precedent and basically precedent alone. Like, they can refer to things a certain way and say, like, oh, well, we're allowed to levy taxes on things. This is kind of a levied tax, but a big chunk of all those judgments is that there's such a well-established precedent for taxing people's income.
Mm-hmm.
This I learned from working at Border Services.
Right. The jurisdiction of England and Wales does not have a criminal code, though such an instrument has been often recommended. As of April 2009, the Law Commission is again working on the code.
I am just flabbergasted.
I am too. That's kind of crazy.
It's all precedent. Which is, in one way, it's good because that means that like when things do change, like when technology changes, and like you start talking about cybercrime, you can make rulings that aren't based on the old code that may or may not apply. You're making new rules, and so if there's a different legal argument that comes up, the court will have to consider it, and then that will become the new precedent.
That's a lot of pressure on a judge, though.
Yeah.
That
Oh
they're
yeah.
literally relying on precedent and their own judgment versus
Right.
relying on the criminal code and saying, well, yeah, you committed a crime.
Yeah. It is.
And the only support mechanism they have is those big robes and ridiculous wigs.
And the gavel.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
too.
yeah. You also get down to the idea that um, there are higher courts too. Like you wouldn't necessarily have a small time judge making a ruling that ends up being precedent forever. Like if something happened, if it came up that it was under dispute, it would get appealed and go to a higher court. But
Yeah.
nothing is final, basically, is what it comes down to. It's all kind of up to interpretation, which is in theory good because those like criminal cases are open to interpretation. So yeah. Anyways, is there anything more we wanted to say on that? We're already over an hour, and we're through a third of the stories.
Well, I mean, they're pretty big stories.
They are pretty big stories. That's true.
So what do you got? I'm genuinely curious to hear your reactions because I've tried to articulate my reaction and what I think, but I'm not entirely sure where either of you stand.
I
On,
am
okay.
all for encryption, like 100% stand behind. Like I don't think having any number of terrorists using encryption is not a reason to not have encryption. Like there's a big law kind of push going through the UK right now talking about getting rid of like making encryption illegal or making the ability to decrypt it a legal requirement. And I just like that can't pass for me because we need to be able to have that. We have like humans, I think, should have a right to privacy no matter what. Even if they're planning something like against a government or against people, they have a right to privacy. We have like law enforcement has a right to kind of use necessary means to get information,
Hmm.
but do it like don't just do it based on the fact that there's no encryption. Like the fact that we're sending everything through wireless signals now means that everything is kind of up for snooping, and the only protection that anyone has for any communication at all that happens through the internet is encryption. It's just not the kind of thing you can leave to law enforcement authorities to do because at a certain point, like it's a slippery slope. Eventually, that's like a totalitarian regime will just be able to shut down any kind of dissent
Right.
if there's
Can
if they
I?
can access any communication.
I mean, you just referenced the slippery slope, and that's almost that's widely regarded as a fallacious line of reasoning
Okay,
Yeah.
because
I can refer you any
anything's a
number of
slippery
books on the
slope.
subject.
I mean, you have a slippery slope on one hand in which, totalitarian state and nobody has any right to privacy. But on the other hand, it's a slippery slope if you allow people to have, total right to encryption and just terrorism could happen always. And we could just live in a lawless land of chaos and anarchy because they didn't overturn our right to encryption.
But it like if terrorists or any person who's kind of against the thread, who wants their communication to be kept private because they're planning something bad, for instance, you they if their phone communication or if their digital communication is unsecure, they're going to use a different method of communication. Having encryption on one method of or having an unencryption law on any one form of communication means they're going to use a different form of communication or a different form of encryption. Like they're just going to send coded messages if they can't, or they're going to use a different form of messaging that is encrypted. Like you're not going to prevent someone from communicating secretly by making any given form of communication public.
Yeah.
That's why I think we may as well uphold the security of encryption rather than shutting down one form. It just, yeah, that's my position, and it would take quite a bit for me to think something like I would need a pretty good argument to change my mind about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, did you have anything to put in or?
I
Yes, I would also like to hear Mike's stance.
I'm fairly of the same mind that it's probably best to maintain status quo for now because I honestly don't have, and yeah, it might be naive or ignorant or whatever of me to just trust the government to use stuff responsibly, but I think if this type of thing is developed where you can break encryption or have a backdoor gets into the wrong hands, then that's what you don't want. And
Mhm.
in some countries, the wrong hands is the government,
Yeah.
but in my case, that's not. So I don't have that type of worldview. As far as encryption and security, the extent that it affects my life on a daily basis is if I'm making an online payment, I check that they're using HTTPS, and that's pretty much
Yeah, yeah,
that's pretty much all I ever worry about encryption and security.
yeah,
And from what I've heard, even that is kind of a false sense of security. But I'm okay staying ignorant to that.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I don't know. If for lack of better terms, it doesn't affect me personally because I don't have quote unquote anything to hide, and I know that's not a very good reason, but that's kind of where
right,
I'm at right now.
yeah,
But I guess in this specific case, I'd agree with Apple that it's a dangerous precedent, and if it gets into the wrong hands, then that's something you don't want to go and get into.
yeah,
Like, yeah, because I think on balance, there's more potential for harm than good
Yeah,
if you just, I mean, especially if you just introduce a backdoor into the entirety of iOS.
right.
Because how many times has a backdoor been exploited?
Every time.
Yes, every
at
time.
least one recently,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay. In that case, why don't we'll do one more, Nick. We'll do your story, and then we'll call it a week.
Ooh. This is more like, I mean, in stark contrast to the other things we've said, this is kind of frivolous,
Yeah,
but
well, let's do it.
I'm
I
curious though. It sounds interesting.
I thought it was really funny. I just got to pull up the link because it had a few estimates. And there was a study in maths because this is reported by the BBC, and the work actually appears in PLOS One, so we could totally all go and check it out.
Oh wait.
But
Oh, this is that one.
they
Did this-
revealed a link between the number of people in on a conspiracy and the time it will take for that conspiracy to unravel. So I guess they actually studied, some previous conspiracies, like, I don't know, Watergate or something like that. But they took that and then extrapolated to say, like, how many modern day suspected conspiracy theories, like how long it would take for that to unravel. And so they said if the moon landing was a hoax, it would have been revealed in 3.7 years just because of the number of people that would have had to have been in on it.
Right.
Climate change fraud would be revealed in 3.7 to 26.8 years, depending on how many people are in on it.
Right.
And the vaccine autism link in 3.2 to 34.8 years, or the cancer conspiracy in 3.2 years. And I'm not even sure what the cancer
Yeah, what's the
conspiracy
cancer conspiracy?
is. Like, cancer is
Well,
just...
no, that there's a cure for it that's being kept under wraps.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Are you big in the foil hat community, Mike?
Well, I just heard because it's like the whole big pharma thing. That big pharma has a cure for cancer,
Oh.
but they're keeping under wraps to keep selling drugs to treat it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, yeah, what was it? Specifically, he was missing a good estimate for the intrinsic probability of conspiracy failing. To determine this, Dr. Grimes analyzed data from 3 genuine collusions. The first was the surveillance program conducted by a U.S. national security agency known as PRISM. This program involved at most 36,000 people and was famously revealed by Edward Snowden after about 6 years. The second was the Tuskegee
Yeah.
syphilis experiment, in which the cure for syphilis, penicillin, was purposefully withheld from the African American patients.
Yeah.
That had 6,700 people and it took 25 years. And the third was the FBI scandal, in which it was revealed by Dr. Frederick Whitehurst that the agency's forensic analysis was unscientific and misleading, resulting in the imprisonment and execution of innocent people. That was 500 people. Maximum of 500 people and 6 years to unravel.
Huh.
So yeah,
That's really interesting.
I just thought that was so cool.
There's the thing that this makes me think is like, what if because there's a lot of conspiracy theories that go around. What if I want to see an example of a conspiracy that if it was a conspiracy, it would have been unveiled in like 4 days or something. Like it's just so many people would have to know that there's no way it would be kept under wraps for more than like 12 minutes.
Well, I mean, along those lines, like that's how apparently a lot of terror plots get blown,
Yeah. Yeah.
or just anything along those lines. It's like the more people have to come in, the greater the likelihood that one of those people is going to be reasonable and go, oh, sweet Jesus, this is going to get bad,
Yeah.
and they eventually go to the authorities. Apparently that's how, like, the vast majority of that kind of stuff gets, like, cracked or broken.
Huh. But yeah.
Or not even reasonable. Someone just comes in and says, hey, I want a payout if I give you this information.
Right.
So I came across this news when it first came out, like this article that you're talking about, and there's a guy on Twitter who posted an article in response to it because it's actually a fairly flawed study or paper. Like the conclusion is fine because obviously, but the reasoning he used and the statistics he supposedly came up with to kind of model this were quite flawed. So it wasn't really sound reasoning, but the conclusion was fine because it's not very groundbreaking. Like it was just kind of an understood thing that conspiracy theories don't work because there's too many people involved. But the modeling he used as far as kind of matching how many people to the likelihood of it getting released or whatever, I think it was like very small sample sizes. Like I think he used like a sample size of 1 for one of the data points to kind of model it, and a lot of the assumptions being made were just kind of pulled out of thin air. They weren't really had any basis for it. So from a peer review basis, this study was not very well received.
Okay.
Because I think this plus one, however you want to pronounce it.
Plus.
I don't think this is a peer-reviewed journal. So this paper didn't pass peer review. Actually, I think what it was is that it wasn't very rigorous peer review it went through. I think that was the whole thing. But the people who did peer review it, they still were okay with it for some reason. But there's definitely some criticism. I was just looking to see if I could find the link to that criticism. Like I agree with the conclusion, but the math and the reasoning behind it wasn't super sound.
I think in contrast to some of the stuff we've covered where it's like, wait, there's some pretty obvious flaws to this. I think this is more a fact that the criticism, which may or may not be valid, is suspect only because this is just like you can only look at conspiracies. It's not like you can just have this big sample pile that he.
But that's the whole thing. It's not really a valid candidate for a scientific study in the first place because how do you just how?
It like maybe for now, given his resources, this is the most scientific kind of study you could do, and the results could be true for good reasons, but like you'd need a bigger sample of conspiracies to draw from in order to make the conclusion rigorously valid. But that doesn't mean that the assumptions are necessarily wrong. It's just that they seem arbitrary. Like I'm not saying because we've seen this paper now, a big secret is going to get blown because a lot of people know about it. It's just like, hey, here's a thing, and I wanted to see if we could use any maths and
Yeah,
statistics
but
to show any link. And there is a link, but obviously this is a very small sample size, and more research is needed to
right.
actually draw.
But it doesn't say that in the original paper, and it was published in a peer-reviewed publishing media that other people will cite and look to as a basis for their own research.
Right.
But that's the whole thing. With the flaws, it really should have been published in there in the first place. I'll post the link, right? Because I found it.
I'm intrigued by this, and this is something that Nick, you've been suggesting I listen to Planet Money for a long time, and so I finally did, and I listened to the one where they talk about papers, and
Oh, the experiment?
yeah, the biases that people have towards not publishing stuff unless it's positive, like really well constructed results. I think this is the kind of paper that is on the other side of things, where it's not this big groundbreaking successful thing. It's just like, we did some research and here are the results. It doesn't have to be amazingly scientifically valid or have a huge sample size to at
But
least be
they're
published.
just saying bad science with poor methodology is worthy of being published. But I don't agree with that.
But what about this makes it?
That's the thing. You have to read the article.
Okay,
Well,
so
you have to
I'm
read
gonna
both.
say, like, this is purely stats work.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
It's-
Yeah.
So this isn't like, a blatant falsification of data.
Oh
Like,
no, no one's
is-
suggesting that.
No, because like the NPR episode that Rob and I are referring to, that's where they talk about how flawed methodology in the social sciences can lead to erroneous conclusions. But I feel like the difference between that and this is that this is still like, the central crux of the idea is still valid. It's just, it could use much better statistical analysis,
Yeah.
is what I'm understanding.
I think
It's-
the
It's just that it lucked out that the conclusion it reached was what everyone agreed with already.
But so on that note, you'd kind of have to do more, like more research is necessary before calling this confirmed, valid, whatever, scientifically rigorous. But the point that in the Planet Money episode was that there are a lot of studies where a group or research group will do 20 experiments. One of them proves something successful on what they were trying to do. They publish that one, but the other 19 just get filed away and never see the light of day. So you could do an experiment where you do 100 coin flips and get 100 heads, and you publish that one, but it doesn't show that you did thousands of other experiments where it worked out almost 50-50. And so you're like, wow, this coin is only lands on heads all the time.
So there's a whole section in this paper where they use graphs to show that, like, the decay of people being around to hold the secret and all this kind of stuff. But there's like literally a mathematical error in the plots. Like, so there's something about changing population and people dying off who originally held the conspiracy, and people around to release it and all this kind of stuff. And he doesn't, in the paper, it doesn't account for people dying and then the secret dying with them and all this kind of stuff. So like, you just read the thing.
Okay.
And so the conclusion that this guy who wrote this criticism of was that he said, in truth, the changes to the math don't affect the conclusions too much. The conclusion still makes sense. If you have a lot of people, hiding conspiracy becomes incredibly unlikely. But we knew this already. Even if we corrected his mistake, the model Grimes presents would just be standard probability curve with some improbable assumptions plugged into it. It doesn't get us any closer to prediction for the longevity of any real-world conspiracy.
It sounds like he needs to write another
It
paper.
does. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
No!
This guy should.
He just-
if
What do you mean, no?
He shouldn't just
That's
do
the
bad math.
point of-
He
That's
shouldn't
the
do.
point of this whole like thing that we do called science
But-
and using journals.
But see, this thing should have come up in the peer review. That's the whole point.
that doesn't mean don't publish it.
No, try to publish it, but that's the whole point of peer review. So peer review failed in this case. That's the whole point.
Peer review may have not pointed out flaws, but just because a paper could be peer reviewed perfectly and still have a flaw, and then
Right.
someone would publish a study that follows up on
Right,
it.
but this is a poor peer review. That's the whole problem. This is poor peer review. it's fine to like want to go do it, but submit a peer review, and the peer review should ideally catch this.
I guess, but catch it and then fix it and then still publish this paper almost exactly the same as it was, and then do a follow-up study.
Yeah, fix
from
it.
this other guy.
But this wasn't fixed, and it shouldn't have got to the point where it's published with this error. Just read the article.
Submit a correction. This guy, not you, Mike. Submit a correction, do a follow-up study, and then you're fine.
I agree. I
think
don't
it's
know
that
if
big of a
he
deal.
I don't know if he has released a statement saying, yeah, sorry, my bad, but
Yeah.
I agree that he should.
I think this is science working the way it's supposed to. Just because something got discovered a bit later than the publication date doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad science. Just like, yep, this guy wasn't a peer reviewer, and if he had been, they would have caught this and fixed it. I don't know. It seems fine. I like this guy's. I've never met this guy before, this David Grimes, but he makes me think of James Grime, and so that's who I'm picturing. And so I'm like, of course he's right. Like, he's a cool guy.
Right. That's called bias, Rob.
Yeah. I am biased towards this guy being a cool guy.
Okay. At least you're willing
I
to
don't
admit
need
that.
safety gloves because I'm Homer Simpson.
Oh, man.
That's a different Grimes, Nick.
The
Grimy.
the,
Was it grimy? Yeah.
yeah, grimy.
Yeah.
They he's looking at maybe Chris T. Botch of the University of Waterloo actually did give some criticisms, and then he was just lost it and was like, "Oh, look at me! I'm Chris T. Botch, and I eat lobster for dinner."
Yeah. I mean, really, all we're talking about here is it's the University of Waterloo that's at fault.
The entirety of the University of Waterloo is at fault. I mean, what even is that campus?
Yeah.
Well, look at me. I'm the University of Waterloo. I like concrete, right angles, and quadrants.
I mean, yeah.
If you've
Right
been to the
up-
University of Waterloo, that will make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Otherwise, it makes no sense at all.
I can imagine what it might mean.
Right
Their
up at the top
library
of,
is at the center of their campus, and it is a cube. A cube made of concrete. They've
Interesting.
nicknamed it the Sugar Cube because they illuminate it at night, and that's what it looks like.
They right at the top of this journal article, it says PLOS ONE, and then it says open access, and then it says peer reviewed. And now
I'm
I'm
not saying
very
it's-
interested to know how it's peer reviewed and how it's differently possibly peer reviewed than other journals, because peer review isn't perfect. Peer review is done by the same people that made this
Right.
wrote this paper, so it's like it doesn't necessarily guarantee that anything's going to be better.
But if
It's just a
the
different
people they're
process.
using to review their papers suck, then the peer review process doesn't work very well.
But it's peers, like that's the
Right.
whole point.
That doesn't mean they're good peers,
Right. It means it doesn't mean the researcher is good. It doesn't mean the peers are good. It's just a different set of eyes.
but ideally the people reviewing it should be good, at least good enough to catch obvious mistakes, like the one that was made in this paper.
But all I've learned from this exercise is that this guy that wrote the follow-up article should
Yeah.
have been a peer reviewer on this piece. If that would have solved the entire issue.
No, what would have solved it was the peer reviewers were good in the first place.
But a peer reviewer being good doesn't necessarily mean they're going to catch everything. It just means they're going to catch things that they've specifically already been through at some point in their career.
I don't know, Rob.
It's like Slumdog Millionaire. You have to go through a specific set of circumstances.
Really?
This
That's where we're going with? That's the
Yeah.
analogy?
this other guy did that. He went through that set of circumstances where he can now point out flaws in this guy's paper, but he wasn't one of the peer reviewers, so it didn't work out. If he had only been the peer reviewer, it would have been fine.
I don't know.
I think you do know.
They should go get a beer and talk about it, and then make up.
Should let people decide for themselves whether this paper is valid or not.
Maybe they should get a pitcher and figure it out.
Aside
Yes.
from the conclusions Drew, because yeah, no one's arguing with the conclusion. It's just how they got to that conclusion
Right.
is flawed.
Mm. Well, would you guys be comfortable wrapping up at this and leaving this for the ages.
I
Yes.
just realized that I wasn't actually paying attention, and I was reading the link that Mike posted. Yeah, this is probably a good point at which to cut it.
Fair enough. Yeah, so thanks again for coming back after our long 3-week hiatus. We'll be back next week with more science and tech talk. You can find past episodes of the show and more at unwindmedia.com/futurechat. See you next time.
Toodaloo.
Ciao.
Oh, you guys have any after show stuff?
No,
Usually you cut the live thing off before we talk about that.
It
not for the what? How can you
I'm
do
all
after
over the
show if
place.
you're not live?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Oh, okay. I thought the whole point of the after show was that it was a different thing.
Sometimes
an
it is,
off-the-air
sometimes it
thing.
isn't.
No.
It's all over the place. Anyways, I should probably go because I have to go and write some Mobile World Congress stuff.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah,
We'll miss
Apparently,
you,
the
Rob.
VR thing
apparently the G5 is a big deal.
and a VR thing.
Is there a VR thing?
LG VR thing, yeah.
Whose? I
LG.
didn't. Like the Magic slot VR thing?
I think it's wireless, but
Oh.
along with the G5, yeah.
Yeah, you have to do a roundup for us for next week.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I'll talk to you guys at a later date and time.
Yes.
Bye.
See you
Indeed,
guys.
that is true.